So, hi everyone. I am so happy and to have somebody online again after some time. Actually, I've been meaning to talk to Sheila, and she has nothing to do. Obviously, that's why I couldn't get hold of her. She has been, such a pleasure to have talked in my interviews. I hope she will one day come to East Coast, or I was planning to come to Seattle. One day we will do that after the coronavirus. But this is Light Up Vichwa. You are listening and watching. I have just recently started this series on because of coronavirus, and I'm, instead of doing the traditional show that I do, I'm trying to connect it to the conscious living. And also I have posed 5 questions that I am asking everybody nowadays related to corona, and I will be asking Sheila about it. So I would like to welcome her to my show and to our conversation today. Sheila, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure. It always delights me to see you. And isn't this just the best of technology?
Yes.
That real relationships can be forged from across the country.
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
It's the best of it.
Yes, and we are at 3 hours difference, right? You're in Seattle, and I'm in Boston area, and amazing. And you have made it work. Thank you so much. I know you are so booked up and doing everything is online nowadays, which makes it a little overwhelming and too much of zooming nowadays. I'm Skyping, so I'm trying to give you some different flavor, but it's not really different, right?
I put my headpiece in my other ear. It's all different.
Okay. Anyway, so Sheila, so do you want to talk about, we were talking off the camera about the poem that you heard of Dr. Ghazala, whom I just talked like a couple of days ago, 3 days ago. And you don't understand Urdu, but what were you saying? So I can tell her to listen to that.
Well, it was such a joy. And I know for me, one of the things that is true at this time more than most, and I'm wired a little bit this way, but I seek out what I refer to as beauty medicine. And when I saw the little snippet, the preview that you posted of her reciting her poetry in Urdu, which, as you say, I don't understand, it touched something deep within me. And I just watched it over and over, and I just let those words and that beauty wash over me. And it's interesting because initially I completely trusted myself. I said, there's something in my heart that is responding to that which she's speaking with such rhythm and melody and these words that I don't understand, that are moving some part of me that does understand. And then my brain got involved for a minute and went, oh wait, but I don't understand what she's saying. What if she's saying that something that isn't supposed to be received this way? What if it's about grief? What it's about? And then I was able to settle and say no. And it just, when I say wash over me, I mean, it's as though I put myself under a waterfall, the soothing kind, not the pounding kind, and just let it cleanse me somehow. It was really profoundly beautiful for me.
So tell me, before I tell you what it means, and I think I'll ask her to translate the poem so that I can share with you. What meaning did you get out of it other than what you're explaining? Like, was there like, okay, this is a sad poetry or a lively poetry or a soothing poetry? But like, what was it? Like, can you put it in your words without knowing what she was saying?
It was something that was, what it felt to me is as though it was something that was honoring of the human experience.
Wow, that's
there
what
was
I want to know. Wow.
Substance of truth that came from her soul that speaks to the human experience, that my soul and my heart and my body responded to, even though my ears couldn't translate. That's what it felt like. And I thought, I want to honor this beautiful artist and physician by hearing her, by letting myself be present with the gift of her words. And I want to receive the blessing of something that honors my experience as a human and all of the collective experience, I guess, that is beyond language, that is beyond skin tone, that is beyond.
Yes.
That is beyond.
Thank you for saying that. I just wanted you to say, I was about to say, like, isn't this beautiful that you, yes, I know that, well, I assume that you don't know Urdu, and you don't, but then the communication that is human to human, and if you really are genuinely speaking to someone and expressing the genuine feelings, and that a person who's totally across, and I don't know, thank you for listening or watching that clip, because it's not necessary you would have watched that. It's amazing, and what you said is what she is trying to say. That is so amazing. That's why I'm like, this is amazing how. So this is a testament to you also, that how connected you are to yourself, in order for you to you opened up yourself to let her words in. And oh wow, Sheila, this was really good.
Thank you. I'm such a supporter of what you do that whenever I can catch us, I will watch them, and it really was so enriching to my day. And I do think it speaks to a lot of the work that I do and in my personal practices are about deep, deep listening.
Yeah, just tell a little bit briefly what you do.
I'm a coach, sort of, that's the easiest category to put me in. And so I work with leadership teams and professionals. I run women's programs, and specifically my area of focus over the last 17 years has actually been crisis. And so what do we do when we meet the end of ourselves? Yeah. And crisis is usually identified by that place where we can no longer predict what our own behavior is going to be, because we haven't had to be in that scenario yet. And so our self-trust is compromised, our resilience, we don't know whether we can lean into it or not. And that deep, deep listening helps us to remember that we are wiser than we know and more equipped than we remember more often than the opposite is true.
Beautiful.
So that's what I teach.
So yeah, and you are a corporate lawyer also. I mean, not anymore. You're not practicing.
No.
But people, she is... I just love the combination. Like, I don't do this law thing again. Really don't? Oh, I wanted to be. And she's like, nah, I've done it, And you did it for how long? Quite many years.
Not very long, actually. I was only in practice for a couple of years, actually, officially. Then
that wasn't your calling, I guess? That's what you felt?
I am so grateful that I did the law. It has become the foundation. To do my JD was the foundation of all of the work that I do. And what I discovered the first time I met an executive coach, she introduced herself to me that way. And I said, I have no idea what that means. I have to take you for lunch. And so we went to lunch, and I came home and I said to my husband, I'm not an attorney. I'm an executive coach. What I loved about the law, what I love about problem solving, what I love and honor of the human experience is much deeper. It's that place where, and the law uses some of it, right? Where you meet people where they are, you use deep inquiry and deep listening to get under issues, behind issues, to really wrap yourselves around something somebody's trying to create or a problem they're trying to solve. And that's very, very specifically what I loved about the law. And so to bring that into executive coaching, where deep inquiry is my master tool, it's what I use every single day. And the law, the course of taking my JD and really studying the law, taught me to ask questions in a much more masterful way, to think about the micro as well as the macro, and how can you use precedent, right, to guide what will... the assumptions that we make, the beliefs that we hold, the stories that we're trying to tell, which perfectly translate to dealing with an individual who's in crisis because they've lost somebody, or because they've had an identity crisis, or they don't know what's next. There is more precedent in our lives lived to the moment than we realize. And so I help to bring this lens of expanding and contracting their view, so that they remember how wise they are. And that's usually something I see before they see. And it's because of the law.
Beautiful.
That because of that way of asking questions
Wonderful.
and persisting.
Thank you.
So
Thank you. All right. So let's. I mean, I know you are still coaching and doing online stuff nowadays because we are in this Corona. What should we call? What would you say to this time?
I think it is. Well, there's the pandemic, of course.
Yeah.
But I think also it is a real opportunity for deep listening. And what that means in my case is noticing beyond, for example, if I'm surfing on Facebook and I see one story that's about Bill Gates is trying to microchip everybody and he's a terrible person, and I see another one that touts Bill Gates as a savior with all the money he's investing in healing and all of those things, and then I see another post for or against, the World Health Organization, all of these things, what I'm looking for is the through line, right? And so I'm looking for what is the energy, what's our emotional energy that we're holding sort of collectively. And I think initially we were in a place of shock and awe. And so everybody was rocked back on their heels. That has shifted now. And what the way I would name it is we're seeing now this shift to, I'm looking for somebody to blame. I'm looking for some place to dig in, to take a hold, to try and remember who I am by remembering what I stand for and what I stand against. And so there's this sort of collective coming out of the shock and awe, looking for who do we blame? How do I create us and them again? And I think we were away from that for a little while. There was a sweet spot of we're in this together, and people, the way it happens, people are finding their pockets again. And so it's interesting, even in this pandemic, to watch us move through the cycles and seasons of crisis in that way. Whether it's with the riots and whether the people who think my rights are being infringed upon, or whether it's the people who are stay at home and who are living in great fear, to the people who are worried about how they're going to feed their children tomorrow, because their kids ate at school, and so that can be a collective set of issue. I'm sorry for the plane.
That's okay. As long as it doesn't pick you up and take you, so that's fine.
Yeah. And there it goes. It's gone now. I think we can lose track of that collective as we drop into these pockets of how do I know who I am? I only know who I am based on who I'm not, and creating.
So, do you think what's the next step? If have you seen this cycle before? Similar cycle? How will we move on from this? Just what you mentioned. Do you think we're gonna get out of it soon from blaming each other and like?
I think the way to answer that question is to look at the microcosms. My hope is there are people like yourself. There are people like Taliesin, who you've mentioned. There are people in the world who are willing to take a stand and put themselves out as leaders and influencers in a different way so that we can see a different way. Now, is this normal when I've gone into teams in crisis? Yes. What happens first is the shock and awe. I can't believe this just happened. So, for example, I would talk about it. Something bad happens. You don't want splashed on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. You hire PR to handle all that. You bring me in to restore a relationship and get you back to what you do best. The first thing everybody does is shock and awe. I can't believe this just happened. The second thing is everybody goes to the corners and goes, well, am I going to get fired? Is this going to fall on me? What was my point of contact? And they start to create distance, right? And that, whether it's fear, whether it's anxiety, whether it's suspicion, and they can be very different motivations, there's a retreat that happens. And then with facilitation, trust can happen again. And that trust has to be in self first. Because if we come into an environment that we don't know and we can't rely on our own tools, and I don't know, for example, if I'm going to walk into a meeting and then burst into tears, I'm going to close my heart before I walk in the room because I'm afraid I'm going to cry. right? Because I'm feeling so emotional, or I'm feeling so exposed, or I'm feeling so tender, or I'm feeling grief. But every single person is feeling that as well. And so as we can restore that self-trust to say, well, A, you don't have to cry, but B, if you do, you're resilient enough to bounce back from that. And what if it's a safe place? So even when our worst fears come true, remembering we're resilient enough to come back from that. So if we can drop into that place of self-trust, I know I'm going to be okay. I know my responses are not going to be perfect, but I know when they aren't, I'm going to learn how to take responsibility for them and do better. I know how to clean up if I accidentally hurt somebody's feelings, somebody's beliefs, and when that self-trust is restored, then people can lean in again, right?
So it's where the person's okay. So where do they stand in this crisis, in this pandemic? Where is individual's journey, where they are in order for them to react to it? I guess in some ways. I don't know if
I do think
said
so. Yeah, I think it is an internal journey first. And this is what's so different about crisis in this moment. Normally, when we're dealing with crisis, for example, when I come in to work with a team or an individual, whatever the scenario, action is required right now. Right? We have to do something. We have to get people back in order. So there is not the luxury of time to do a lot of self-reflection. In this, we have a lot of time, some of us, right? To bother to look within and say, what is the best of this that I can take forward? To wonder about the old normal and say, which parts of the old normal are worth breathing life into again in the new normal? And which parts, frankly, are we just better off leaving in the past, right? So it is an individual journey. And then I think from a grassroots level, having conversations, socializing different ideas, checking in with each other in a way that we have never done before. I was telling you before we came on, offline, about a group of women I do this online happy hour with. And sometimes I'm tired and I'm zoomed out, and they are too. But the coming together has become so important just so that we can say, how are you? And be real and be present. And I hope we carry that forward.
That's good. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, not only
that's
exactly. You're right.
Yeah. So that's something that's been really of service. And so if that continues, that will start from a grassroots place to change the dialogue. The other thing that I see is when people ask, how are you doing? People mean it more than they used to. It used to be, hey, how's it going? And keep walking, right?
Yeah.
Now it's, hey, how are you? Or it's a much more specific, I've tended to shift my question. So it's now, how's today? Right? How are you today? And so there's this heart connection, or this willingness to see each other beyond, trying to get 800 things done in the course of the day, behind our productivity, that I think is a really profound gift.
That's good.
So that's where the individual journey meets the community. Well, meets our friends, meets our peers, meets our colleagues, meets our community, meets our city, meets our, and you can start to build up from there.
Good. Thanks. That's good. So you're having more time with your friends also, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
So, okay. So I had asked these 5 questions to everybody. So while you are here, I just want to take this opportunity to